Good morning. We're going to take just a couple of minutes here, let people roll in, seeing people coming in online. Glad to see you all this morning. Give another moment or two here for more people to jump on board. Welcome. Glad you're able to join us this morning. Morning. All right, I'm going to get started as people continue to roll in here. Welcome to the Crossroads Career Network webinar this morning. If you're here in Minnesota, you're getting a bunch of snow this morning. And if you're not in Minnesota and not seeing the makings of a white Christmas, I hope it's nice where you are as well. I know that on these webinars we get people from all over the country. I'm grateful for that, and so everybody's got a different experience this morning. But I think we're supposed to get 5 to 6 inches of snow today. I hope you don't have to drive very far this morning or anytime today. It's going to probably be slow going out there on the freeway. Again, welcome, and my name is 𝙤🕋🕋. I lead Minnesota Crossroads Career Network, and I'm glad that we're able to do these webinars. I really appreciate all of you that join us, and I know you're going to be looking forward to hearing from Michael Hurley this morning, who's going to talk about applicant tracking systems, which is the nemesis of the job seeker, right? And so he'll talk about his experience on the other side of that and give you some great insight in how they work and how to maximize your chances of getting through that process. Along with all that, our hope with Crossroads is to provide the best help and resources for your job search as we can, while also pointing to the encouragement and hope of Jesus Christ. Many frustrations in our life, especially in a job search, are when we don't get what we think we want. Sometimes it's even something we maybe have been praying for, like a specific job, and it doesn't come through. What I often forget, though, is that God knows things that I don't know, and that he can see around corners that I can't. You know, as an example, say I'm walking down the street and come to an intersection. The light turns green in my direction, so I step off the curb to cross the street, but in stepping down, I trip and fall. I'm upset and frustrated because I never trip like that, and it's humiliating there on the street, excuse me. However, what I didn't know was that a speeding car was coming that ran the red light, and had I stepped out further into the street, I would have been hit. Was that fall a bad thing or a good thing? And had I been praying for getting across the street as quickly as I can, my prayer wouldn't have been answered, but it was a good thing. The Bible says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he'll give you the desires of your heart. The best way to think of that passage is that when you trust him with your life and are committed to following him, he will change the desires of your heart to be more in alignment with him. He wants the best for us. So sometimes when we don't get something we think is good for us, like a particular job, he may be protecting us from something we don't know and can't see. We can be thankful for that. Doesn't always feel that way in the moment, but so many times in my life, I've seen it after the fact. Let me open us in a word of prayer, and we'll jump into the rest of the content for this morning. Lord, I'm just grateful for these opportunities we have to come together, even if it's virtually and can't see each other. But we pray that your will be done this morning, that everyone gets something today that is helpful and useful and productive for them. But as importantly, Lord, that they get a sense of you in your work in their life, and that you give them clarity in terms of and wisdom about how to move forward. Thank you, Lord, for all the ways that you do bless us, especially coming up to the Christmas season. We pray that you can use this time for your purposes. In Jesus' name, amen. You know, as we are coming up on Christmas here in less than a week, we just hope that each of you can take a little time out of your job search and be able to focus on the real reason for the season, the blessing that he gave us by coming, and hope that it's a blessing for you and your family. I have a short 10-minute video here that I hope is going to be inspirational for you. It's by Michael McDowell, who is a NASCAR driver, and it's just a perfect illustration of how our careers don't always unfold the way we think they should, and that our opportunities and successes don't come in the way that we plan them to be. But where do we turn, and what do we rely on during those times is what's really important. Let me share my screen here, and then when we come back, I'll introduce Michael Hurley.
Being a NASCAR driver, there's 39 losers and 1 winner. I remember thinking, I almost died right there. 9 months later, I was without a job, sleeping in my rental car in the parking lot. If I ever had a shot to win a race, this is it. Right after that national anthem, you load into the car. Nerves are kicking in. When they say, gentlemen, start your engines, you light that engine up. You hear that sound of 8 cylinders and 750 horsepower fire up. That's when it gets real. You can't lose focus, not even for a second. Inside that race car, it is hot, it is loud, it is rough. But there's not a lot of time to unclench from the steering wheel because you're holding on so tight. And when you're in that zone, everything slows down and gets quiet. Your brain is going faster than those wheels are. You're not just thinking about where that car is, where you are, but the move you're gonna make, how you're gonna make it, what you need to do. Even though you're 200 miles an hour, inches apart or inches from the wall, you don't feel like it. You feel like you're in complete control until you're not. I came into NASCAR in 2008. I was young and arrogant and had a chip on my shoulder. I'd won everything that I've ever done leading up to that point, and felt like that wasn't gonna stop. And very quickly, I got very humbled in this sport. 2008, the first thing right out of the gate, race 2, Texas. I had this huge crash. I got into turn 1 and got loose, and the car started to spin out, and I went to the brakes, and there was no brakes there. I went to the gas, and it just hooked. And when it hooked and turned, I was facing the wall, and I remember thinking, man, this is gonna hurt.
Whoa, guys, whoa, whoa, oh, no, oh, my gosh.
When I hit the wall, I was doing about 185 miles an hour when I went head on into the wall. Somewhere around 100 Gs was the impact, and then barreled 13 times. Once that first impact happened, everything got super quiet, and it sounded like somebody hit the mute button, and I could just hear a crunch, crunch, crunch. And I was just thinking, when is this gonna be over? And when it finally landed, I remember wiggling my fingers, wiggling my toes, trying to figure out, all right, I got anything broke? Am I alive? What just happened? And once I got out of the car and I stepped down, I realized that they're playing it on the replay. And when I saw it from that perspective, I was like, oh man, I almost died right there. You want to get known for winning races and winning championships, but I got known, for that big accident. I came into the sport with a big contract and a multi-year deal, and 9 months later I was without a job, and my wife was pregnant, expecting our first child, and just so much happening in that period of time, and so many trials that it was really hard to wrap my head around, what God was doing. I remember, just opening up my Bible and just praying, like, Lord, what do you want me to do? And I just closed my eyes and I opened up my Bible and I landed on James 1. And James 1 says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be not lacking in anything. And it's just one of those moments where just God spoke to me that this, hard times that I'm facing, it's for a reason, that it's doing something in me and through me, and it's teaching me about what it means to persevere and what it means to lean in and trust in God. And that perspective really changed, what my next 10 years looked like in the sport. it was rough and it was a grind, and you know, showing up to the racetrack knowing that you're not going to be able to run all the races and not run all the laps, and you know, driving to the racetracks and sleeping in my rental car in the parking lots, and staying in other people's hotels, and bumming rides just to get there, that it wasn't wasted, that God was using it, and that he was doing something that was shaping and molding not just my career, but me. I was doing what I had to do to stay in the sport, to continue to gain experience and build relationships that one day would hopefully allow me to go back to full-time racing. And I started with a small team, and we were running 30th every weekend. And then, you know, 6 months later, we're running 25th, and 6 months later, we're running 20th. And it's just a slow process and a build. And, you know, finally got to where I was running full-time and running competitively. Still wasn't winning, wasn't running top 10, top 5, but we were in the mix. And it started to feel like there was, you know, light at the end of the tunnel. And finally got to the point last year where we were competitive every weekend and getting top 10s and getting some top 5s. And, you know, that took 14 years to know that, you know, you can be without a job in just a second. Just helped me to really just trust God, that God had a plan, and it doesn't always look how I want it to look or how I expected it to look, but God is faithful. And you know, I came to the racetrack week after week hopeful that this is the week. This is the week it's going to happen. This is the week that everything's going to come together, and I'll finally get that opportunity to win a race. And you know, it took a long time and a lot of trials to get there, but my opportunity finally came. First race of the year, our biggest race in the sport, Daytona 500. The granddaddy. If I ever had a shot to win a race, this is it. It finally all started to come together. Coming to about 5 laps to go, I felt like I was in a really good spot. I was right where I wanted to be. I had a plan, sitting in the top 5, sitting third. Coming off of turn 2, I had a big run. I was pushing the 2 car. He went for it, tried to pass the 22, and it was literally like the seas parted. They had contact. The 2 went to the right, the 22 went to the left, and I went right through the middle. And then the caution comes out with the checkered flag, and you sit there and you think, man, I think I just won the Daytona 500. And so there's a 90 seconds there where they didn't know who had won the race. They had to go back and look at the film, and immediately my mind just went, oh, what if you didn't? What if you didn't win? You're so close. What if you didn't win? And then they said 34 to victory lane. I just remember just being overwhelmed. Just overwhelmed with emotion. I mean, I was making noises that I didn't know I could make, and just so much pure just excitement to finally win a race and to do it at the Daytona 500. And I remember about 30 minutes after the win, just this overwhelming just gratefulness and very sombering of feeling like, man, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. Like, God literally provided this opportunity, and it started 14 years ago. God was walking with me through the valleys before we got to the mountaintop. The grind and the trials, he was shaping and molding me for this moment, to be ready for this moment. When you get to the mountaintop and you know that God's walked with you the entire time, and that Christ dwells in us. He died on the cross for me so I could be forgiven of my sins. That's enough for me to give him my entire life and to follow him. There's nothing greater than having that peace of knowing that God is with you and walks with you. My name's 𝙉𝙖𝙫𝙞𝙜𝙖, and I am second.
Well, there we go. Sorry. You know, it's certainly been true in my life, and I'm sure for most of you, that things don't work out as planned initially, but where we turn and where we get wisdom and direction and persistence in our life is really what matters. And hope that was inspiring for you and gives you some fresh hope and perspective, and hopefully things won't take 14 years till you hit your greatest success, but it will. It certainly can get you there. With that, I want to welcome Michael Hurley. Michael and I have known each other for more years than probably either of us wants to admit. We've worked together. We've been friends for a very long time. Michael has been in recruiting as long as I have, probably, or maybe even longer. He's worked at search firms and agencies, and he's also worked at a number of companies doing corporate recruiting, companies like little ones you probably never heard of, like General Mills and Target and Best Buy and others. And from understanding applicant tracking systems, he's got it. He's worked with several of them. He'll describe all that to you as he goes through his presentation this morning, and can give you some great insight into how they work, what he sees on the other end, and what you can do to help improve your odds of getting through the process. If you have questions or comments, put them into the chat box, type them in there. We'll respond to them. Possibly some as we go, others will wait till the end, but certainly want to address any questions you have as he goes through his presentation today. Michael, thanks for being here. Oh, and after Michael is done, I'll come back on and I'll provide an overview of other things that are available to you through Crossroads, and it's all free. I want you to take advantage of all the help you can get. So I'll turn that over to you. Michael, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Harry. My pleasure. My pleasure. Boy, that's an awesome video, and I love that verse about perseverance. That is encouraging and uplifting, I would say. I've certainly used that verse during my career, but thanks for being here today and listening. As Harry said, my career has been in recruiting primarily well over 20 years. I almost hate to say that, but probably 20 years of that has been in a corporate seat as I am now currently with Best Buy corporate in Richfield, and have been there going on just about 9 years. My days, weeks, months are interviewing people, are working with hiring leaders as we work through the whole process from job posting through getting someone hired. And then I sit in obviously debriefs with hiring teams on a regular basis, going over the results of what we would call panel interviews. In terms of, and then specific to Grace, I should say, excuse me, I've been going to Grace for, well, since 1990, and have been part of the Crossroads group. I believe it's been 10, 12 years now. Love the ministry, love the things that we can offer individuals that are in a transition. Excuse me, it's specific to applicant tracking systems. As Harry mentioned, as a consultant, I've been part of Target, General Mills, previously Best Buy, Blue Cross Blue Shield, US Bank, and certainly some other smaller companies in the tech space. And as well in the agency space where I met Harry, excuse me, getting over a cold, so apologize for that. So with that, have had experience with a lot of applicant tracking systems, and they're all different, unique. They all have different nuances, functionalities, and the companies that use them all differently. We can have the same system in General Mills and Target, and they will use it differently. So just be aware of that. But wanted to go through the just the quick overview of what I'm going to be talking about. So the common things we hear about ATS, obviously we'll go into what you might not know, how many ATS systems there are, who has an ATS, so on down the list. I probably won't, as they say, drain the slides, but I will certainly be walking through these different aspects in terms of the content. So, and hopefully we'll have some good questions in the end. So common things that we typically hear, and I've heard a lot of for many years in Crossroads, is an ATS, it's a black hole. Resumes go in and they never come out. Other things like how do I beat the game? How do I bypass the ATS? One of the things I certainly hear a lot is it says there's 70% of the resumes go into an ATS and are never reviewed by a human. And there's a little bit of truth to that, which I'll explain in a minute. And then why do we even have an ATS? We'll obviously touch on that as well. In terms of things you might not know, so specific to your resumes going into an ATS, it's, a lot of people say nobody sees it, a human doesn't see it. But I would say that's fairly inaccurate. People do decide who moves forward in the process, as the slide says, the majority of the time, not the ATS. But that's assuming that you are qualified in terms of an applicant. So when you apply, and most systems do this, when you apply, there's some sort of coding ranking system in place that will either say that you meet the qualifications or you don't. And if you don't, you typically will get and should get an automated communication saying, thank you for your interest. We won't be moving forward with your application at this time, in so many words. Those resumes, goes to the point of 70% not being seen. I would say that's probably a high number, but it depends on the position. But those resumes we don't see. They are in the application. They're in the requisition that we're working in for any given position. We can see how many people applied. We can see certainly that in this case, Tom Jones, Barb Smith were declined for not meeting minimum requirements. But again, we don't see those resumes unless we make a concerted effort to go to that section of the ATS. We do see then all the rest that have met qualifications or met requirements. Companies use different terminology for that. So I wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. As I mentioned, ATS systems, they're not the same, and nor are they used the same. So I'll get into that in a few minutes here. But then 50 to 60% of job applications in ATS are abandoned. So I don't see that many, and I think it's dependent on the type of positions that we're talking about. But people get frustrated with an applicant tracking system or having to go through different applicant tracking systems each time they apply to different companies. Sometimes they miss a few steps. Sometimes they purposely just say, I'm tired, I'm done, I can't do this anymore, but your information is still in part in the applicant tracking system. So that's the other part is, and I'll note it later, but you just have to make sure that with any application process that you follow the full process, answer all the questions honestly, accurately, in detail, as much as you can, and that will get you at least closer to being reviewed, if you will, by one of the recruiters or sometimes hiring managers. So how many ATS systems are there? And I should make a quick comment. So ATS stands for applicant tracking system. So when I say ATS systems, I feel like I'm doubling up on the words, but apologize for that in advance. So I'll try to stick with ATS. But as you can see, there are 60 top applicant tracking systems that are used. Best Buy, since I've been there over the 9 years, we've used 2. We started with Taleo. We moved to Connexa Brass Ring, which is really a combination of 2. And we have Workday, and we will probably move to Workday in the near future. We just aren't using the applicant tracking system part of it. But as you can see, there's a lot of others that are the top used applicant tracking systems, and in there's a note of proprietary. So there's some homegrown systems that companies build themselves. So it gets to the topic of can I figure all these out? It's like, no, you just have to step through them as they come to you based on what company you're applying to. So. And who has an ATS? goes kind of back to what I had said before about the comments that we get, that how do I get around the ATS? How do I beat the game? It's like, well, it's pretty hard. As you can see, 98% of Fortune 500 companies, through some of the research I did, have an ATS. 75%, and I would suggest that that's higher. Recruiters obviously use some type of an ATS. I have, and I'm sure Harry has, in pretty much every role that we've been in. And then even small companies, a lot of the colleagues I know work for, relatively small companies compared to like a Best Buy or a Target. And they have their own ATS. Again, it could be proprietary. It could be as simple as an Access database. It could be an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of who's applied for what position, contact information, etc. So you really, unless you're with applying to a very, very, very small company, you're probably going to bump into an applicant tracking system no matter where you go. So why do companies use an ATS? Well, I've been around long enough to have had stacks of resumes with the envelope and cover letter put on my desk for me to go through. But since then, in the advent of being able to apply online, it's been a challenge, to say the least, sometimes to manage the applicant flow. So as you know, as an applicant, you can go online and apply for 30, 40, 50 jobs in a day. So that was one of the reasons I think that the applicant tracking systems started, is to manage the flow of applicants, keep track of, as it says down below, applicant information. So keep track of your resume, keep track of the timing of your resume, the communication that goes out from the system to you. Sometimes we certainly can keep track of the communication that you send to us. Certain systems will capture that. Obviously, interview notes that we take down when we interview you, they're in the system as well. Offers, onboarding information. So a huge amount of information is flowing into and out of the applicant tracking system. And certainly we use it for reporting. How many people applied to any given position, how many people were hired, how many roles did a company fill. So any kind of reporting you think of. Government compliance is one. This gets to comments that some people make about 70% of jobs in the market are filled without being posted. And I would say that's relatively inaccurate, but any company that has any kind of government contracts, government work, has a whole nother realm of responsibility to report out of an ATS and to post a very specific way. And Best Buy does that through our Best Buy Health area. Customized screening is another aspect of any given ATS. So when you have an application in play, you're going to see questions that they're going to ask. How much experience do you have in this area? Do you have this amount of experience? Do you have a bachelor's degree? Do you have this certification? So anytime, and then specific certainly to Best Buy, that we post a position, we will add specific questions that line up with the qualifications, both required and preferred, that you would end up answering when you apply. So that custom screening process also covers actual questions that we would ask in any given interview, so that we're very consistent with the questions that we ask every candidate in every role. And I already mentioned that obviously it helps us from an efficiency standpoint. And then the last note there, builds a talent pipeline. Because the applicant tracking system is a large database of resumes, we can go back into that applicant tracking system and look for people, as I mentioned before, like people with tax backgrounds, people that are software engineers with React Native backgrounds, people that are data scientists in a retail capacity. So when you apply, you can imagine, obviously we can typically hire one person. We may have 6 people interviewed by the actual hiring panel. I might interview anywhere between 10 and 15, sometimes 20 for a role. So I'm kind of backing up the funnel here. But obviously a lot of those people that are solid talent in a specific discipline don't get hired. So we try to do our best to go back into the applicant tracking system to say, oh, we just filled a tax position. 3 months ago. I wonder if we can contact some of the people that are in there that were not moved forward for whatever reason and see if they're interested in applying. So that's obviously a advantage to you and to the company that has that works that way with their ATS. Now, again, everybody doesn't do it that way, but Best Buy does. So in terms of what you don't need to know is how they all work. Like I mentioned, you really can't because no two are the same. So and the functionality in each is very different. I remember when I stepped into General Mills as a consultant, they had one of the big systems. I believe it might have been 𝙬𝙀. And this was the same was true for Best Buy back in about 2006. We're using a big system, but they were only using the back half of it to basically note when that you applied, and all the steps in between weren't being used. And then everything was tracked after that when you were made an offer or declined for a role, and then onboarding. And then, I certainly made the suggestion that we use it in more detail to track communication, keep notes, etc. And I think we started doing that in both areas. But again, functionality is used differently. There's some applicant tracking systems that will automatically compare your resume to the job description. For example, 𝙬𝙀 will do that. It's called what's called a rec rank. And basically, it ranks each applicant based on how well their resume scores based on the job description. So there's a tying of the resume and the job description, and then there's a ranking, and typically that ranking would be a number, if you will. So in terms of AI, a lot of people comment on that about, with the advent of AI, and again, nobody's looking at my resume, but I would say most of the systems, though this will continue to change, don't use real broad AI in their applicant tracking system. That's an aspect certainly that's growing. As an example, a friend of mine, a couple of them have worked with Amazon, and I thought of all companies, probably Amazon or Google, let's say, might be using AI, and they were pretty clear that they really don't use AI as a part of the review of an application. So just be aware of that. For Best Buy, as an example, we do I'll walk through that process. So every time we post a position, again, I mentioned that we add qualifying questions to that posting. So when you apply, you'll see questions that if we ask for 5 years of software engineering with React Native, you'll have a question that says, how many years of experience do you have using React Native? And when we're looking for 5, if you go into the system and you say, I have 3 to 4, which hopefully is obviously very accurate information you're providing, you would get automatically declined by the ATS because you do not meet minimum qualifications. So there's a kind of an important side note, when you're looking at any given application, you really have to pay attention to what they're asking for, no matter how they state it. If it's qualifications, requirements, skills, etc., you want to make sure that your skill level and the amount of skills that you have match with what the posting is asking for. Again, otherwise you will get declined. If you are, in our case, if you meet qualifications, you're given a score, and that score is based on, again, how you answer the question. So you might have 4 questions that are required to be able to be qualified for the role, and you'll get 10 points for each question that you answer with the right basically amount of experience. And then there's preferreds, and you'll get 1 point for each of those preferred. So let's say there's 4 required questions that you are asked, and then there's 4 preferred skills that are noted. You could get 44 in terms of the total number. And I would see that on the applicant tracking system next to your name and next to a number of other pieces of information. And if I wanted to, if there happened to be a lot of applicants, I can basically organize the applicant tracking system inside that requisition to see those who have the highest point total first. I should take note of that, though. Even if we have 100 applicants that meet qualifications, we will start that way and obviously review those who have the highest point total, just out of an efficiency, from an efficiency perspective. But generally speaking, I would say we all read all the resumes, because just because you don't have some of the preferred skills, you might have very strong skill set as it relates to what's required. So we do not want to miss an opportunity to identify talent and be able to talk to you. So there's just a quick scenario in terms of how Best Buy works. And as the slide says, the systems, again, kind of goes back to they all use different ranking systems. So some will provide a color ranking, some will give a percentage match to a job description or a job posting. Obviously, a lot of them use numbers, some use a combination of those things. And it really is up to the company, again, as to how they use it. So any given, in this case, our talent acquisition team really strives to be consistent across the level of recruiters that we have. And we have 4 different levels of recruiters working on different positions. So we are really doing a lot of training to say, let's be very consistent in terms of the type of questions that we put in there and how we set them up from a scoring perspective, et cetera. And some of that's just, it's from a legal perspective, you want to do that. So again, the applicant tracking system's not going away. They're going to be more AI oriented as AI grows in terms of the marketplace. So you should just be aware of that. So next, we want to talk a little bit about, and by the way, this, our time will hopefully give you a chunk of time to ask questions about the applicant tracking system. So what to consider when you apply for any given role. And a lot of the work that I do with Crossroads is facilitating our job search training classes. And I always talk about, in the process, control what you can control. And in this case, as I think you probably figured out, you can't really control what kind of applicant tracking system you're working with, nor can you, if you will, get around it, so to speak. You really need to start with knowing the job description and certainly the company, and do your research. But specific to the job description, I would say that's kind of your key in terms of as you're looking at it and you go to apply, really pay attention, as I said, to the skill level and how you're answering the questions that are posed to you in that applicant tracking system, because that is giving you a rank in terms of all the applicants that might apply for that role. And then if you go to the resume aspect, I would say we talk about keywords. Is that a major influencer? Yes and no. Again, it depends on the system. Our system, and none of the systems that I've used of late, are keyword driven in terms of a yes, no to an applicant being qualified or meeting qualifications. Some systems do that, though, as I mentioned previously, but they will align what keywords jump out as it relates to the qualifying words that you might see in the job description. So it's a little confusing, but if we mention Java, if we mention business analyst, if we mention audit, if we mention state and federal tax preparation, and that's in the job description, you want to make sure that's in your resume. And of course, as you're asked the questions around those, obviously want to make sure that you list, accurately the level of skills that are being asked. So again, from a resume perspective, you don't need to load it up with keywords. I always say what you need to do is make sure that what the company is asking for is represented in the work that you've done. And I would say 20% of the time, maybe a little bit more, if we're interviewing someone and it looks like they have the experience that we're asking for in a specific keyword example, but we're not seeing it, there's kind of a coin toss scenario there. It's like, I don't see what we're asking for here, but it looks like they've done that. Looks like they've used that tool. So we're going to move forward with the phone interview and then ask. And oftentimes I'll ask people, well, have you used React Native in your software development capacity? And they go, oh yeah, I use it every week. It's like, well, it's not on the resume. So fortunately, we decided to move forward with that interview and ask them about that. And they did have that. So I would say, going back to that, just make sure that what's represented in your resume, and certainly in what you answer in the questions, matches with what the company's looking for. So simply put, from a resume style, a resume format, not all systems do this either, but some, if you will basically turn your beautiful resume that has graphs and boxes and lines and different types of fonts, it'll turn it into a big block of text, that is really hard to read. So some systems do that. Our current system doesn't. So we can get basically what is a text version of your resume in one section that the system basically puts it into that. But there's also a section where you attach your resume. So whatever type of resume you have, you can attach that. But just be aware that formatting matters. So I would suggest a simpler format overall than one that has, again, a lot of graphs and a lot of activity going on, because some of the systems just don't like those formats. And the same thing with fonts. I would stick with, and I never know how people are going to say this, but Calibri or Calibri. Aptos is one we've started using. Arial, maybe Times New Roman. Just stick with some pretty solid standard fonts in your resume. One side note, kind of another conversation, but I would say also make sure it's a reverse chronological resume, as I've noted in here, not a functional resume. And there's a lot of reasons for that. If you want to ask that after a little bit, that's totally fine. But it's harder for systems to pick up how that's read. But I would say overall, from a recruiter perspective and certainly a hiring manager perspective, most people do not like functional resumes. So the other thing that seems obvious, but as I mentioned before, complete the application. So you have to really put on our patient hat as you're going through the application, through Indeed or LinkedIn, whatever you're working through. But again, be patient, walk through the process as is being asked or directed of you. And at least that part you won't have to worry about. You'll fill everything out as you're supposed to, which means that gives you, again, the chance of being fully reviewed. And bottom line, it seems obvious, but I think this is in part why some people don't blame the ATS is, I applied and either I got declined or I didn't hear. It's like, well, there's still a fair amount of people that we see that apply to roles that they could reasonably do. There isn't a question necessarily whether they could do the job, but do they actually have the qualifications evident in their resume and in the application? And I would say a lot of times they don't. So again, the applicant tracking system picks that up and will actually decline you. So just be very honest, I guess, with yourself as you're looking at jobs. It's like, do I have the skills based on what they're asking to do this job and to qualify for the job and to get a conversation with a hiring leader or a talent acquisition professional? So I think that's one tip that I like to give people all the time. So because again, it can be a frustrating, long process to get to the dance, if you will, and you just want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward for the company. So, in terms of closing comments, again, this should leave a decent amount of time for questions, but this goes a little bit beyond, obviously, the applicant tracking system that I've been talking about. But pre-applicant tracking system or pre-applying work, I think, is really important. We talk about a lot of people will apply to jobs 70% of the time and network 30% of the time. And actually, it should be reverse of that. And I would say doing networking prior to applying has a number of benefits. One, if you do get connected with someone in a company where a position is that you'd be interested in, they can certainly get you to either a recruiter or a hiring leader. And I have that happen relatively frequently, where a hiring leader will shoot me a resume, say, hey, I know this person, or a friend of mine sent me this individual's resume. Michael, would you take a look at it? I think they're going to be interested in this role or that role. Additionally, especially if you have someone like a friend at a company, or someone's referred to you to connect with about a particular company, they may be able to tell you in advance about what to expect in terms of the application process, the applicant tracking system. So there's a lot of advantages to that. And then certainly, even if you do go ahead and apply, if you're referred through networking, you're almost guaranteed to get a conversation, whether that turns into a job or not. But I would say it's extremely rare that we don't talk to someone who's been referred to us by a manager, and sometimes even friends outside the company. So just be aware of that. And I noted here the 20-minute networking meeting by Nathan Perez, a great book. There's videos from Nathan on the Crossroads YouTube site for the Min Crossroads. Past videos, if you will, I would just say, take a look at that. Interview prep. That is probably what I spend most of my time on with candidates when I do the facilitation of the classes. So you can do everything really well in terms of maybe networking and applying, following all the aspects of an applicant tracking system asks. And then when it comes time to the interview, as I tell people, if you get asked to dance, you better be able to dance. So from an interview prep perspective, that's why I put that on there, is super important to do what I take my classes through a lot of is mock interviewing. And if you don't do mock interviews with a group or a friend, you have to at least verbalize practicing your interview answers out loud, not thinking what you're going to say and hoping that it'll come out that way when you get into the interview, but actually literally talking to your phone, talking to the mirror, talking to your dog. Very, very important. And the STAR technique is one that I would highly recommend, and one we recommend throughout Best Buy for individuals who may be struggling a little bit with being able to tell their story. So obviously you can see in the bottom of the slide, there's a lot of resources from mincrossroads.com and certainly the national site, the crossroads.org, in terms of skills and tips, etc. And then I also mentioned too, there's a great devotion called Help Wanted by Aaron Basco that you can certainly get that on Amazon. But walking through this transition is never easy. The applicant tracking system is a part of that process, a part of that frustration. And I think stepping into God's word and stepping away from that whole process and getting into God's word will really make the process a lot better for you. And I would say it kind of gets you in the right mindset. And it goes back to the first video, it's even just landing on a particular verse that you repeat to yourself on a daily basis can be super helpful in this process. So I'll stop there and open it up for questions. If you want clarification on any of the things that I've said so far, please pop them in the chat and let us know.
Yeah, please do add your comments and questions into the chat. Michael, there's one person asked about, she's been regularly ghosted, and I think that's the common complaint for people is they apply online and never have access to actually get a chance to talk to somebody, never hear of anything, what happened. How do you recommend getting some answers?
Well, the ghosting the ghosting word there's different meanings there. So what I've discovered over the years is sometimes people feel ghosted when you apply and you don't get a human interaction, like a live email from a recruiter. But as I mentioned before, with the literally, there's one role that I've been working on for a month and a half now. It's a data science role, and we've had from across the country 550 applicants, and I've reviewed probably 300 of those resumes. But there's another 200 that got automated communication. They did get communication, not a live person, but they did get communication from the ATS. So some people feel ghosted if you don't get any kind of live interaction or live email, and that's really not ghosting. It's part of the process because we can't communicate with everyone. Now, the ghosting process, if you do actually get a chance to talk to a talent acquisition professional, for instance, you interview with them and then you don't get any feedback. Unfortunately, that has some consistency across the market. It really depends on the company and depends on the individual. So I always tell people, don't throw the company under the bus. You know, it could just be an individual that's not very good at getting back to people. So that there's certainly that. But as it relates to the ATS, again, you will get communication. It's communication.
Unfortunately, I know that almost every ATS system has that capability to send out an automated response. Unfortunately, an awful lot of companies don't turn that capability on. I did a little consulting years ago, helping a couple of companies improve their hiring processes, and that was one of the first things I looked for. Is, it improves a candidate experience if they at least get something. And unfortunately, a lot of companies don't bother to do that. If somebody's not hearing something, obviously from a job seeker perspective, they're always more anxious to keep the process moving quickly more than the company is. It's they work on different timeframes. How often would you recommend somebody check back in with you to find out where things are at?
Well, going back a step or two, again, that's where the networking piece helps, in terms of getting connected with someone in the company who connects you with, typically they'll connect you, in this case, with someone like myself. So there you do, you will get that communication. But in terms of follow-up, if you have someone to follow up, and again, you wouldn't necessarily have that right away either. But if you have an email, if you have certainly talked to someone, then I would typically say once a week is fine. And I literally had this with my daughter's 28. She's got a great job. She's deciding to look for another one. And she was like, well, Dad, they haven't got back to me in 2 weeks, so it's probably done. I was like, no, I don't think so. Everybody has their own timing. Best Buy is pretty good about being speedy once we get to the process where I'm talking to you. But lo and behold, about a week later, she got a call and an email, both, and said, hey, we'd like to schedule you for the next round of interviews. So she texted me right away and said, oh, guess it's not over. So you have to be patient, but it's a simple email saying, I'm still very interested in the role, just checking in. I've had that a lot of late, where people just say, hey, Michael, I know you said that it's going to be a couple of weeks before we get any news. We're hitting it about that timeline. Just want to let you know I'm still very interested. Anything else I could provide you? Some variation on that theme once a week is totally fine. And you have to remember, we might be working with, let's say right now, I think I have 10 to 12 different positions that I'm working on, anywhere from 20 to, as I said, 500 applicants in one. I'm talking to a lot of people. So who has the better opportunity to reach back out, me or you? As an applicant? There's one of me, and there's a lot of applicants out there. So put that on your list to make sure you follow up. Don't just plan on getting a response.
The thing with recruiters, whether it's in an agency or on the corporate side, is there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Michael certainly falls into one of the good, and he follows up with people. I know that for a fact, and tries to keep people informed of what's going on. But unfortunately, there are others that don't, and you can't change that. Michael's slide about control what you can control, and that's all you can do is really the right answer. You can't make somebody do something that they're not inclined to do. So certainly follow up on your own, but you can't, there's no guarantees there. Somebody, just a quick aside, somebody's asking, is this video going to be available to review? Yes, it will be posted later today on our YouTube channel, and I'll describe more about that and how to find us later on after we're done here with Michael. Somebody's asking about how important is a cover letter? I always love this question. It always comes up. It's a valid question. And go ahead, Michael. I think we're on the same page on this.
Yeah, I would say not very important. Caveat there, some applicant tracking systems will require a cover letter, a resume and a cover letter. Some do. I would say that's pretty rare. The amount of cover letters that I've read, even in 9 years, I would say under 20. And there's a section on our applicant tracking system where I go to right away that's for your resume that you downloaded. There's another section, another tab that would be able, you can download a cover letter. And this goes back to when I had paper resumes that we looked at. The resume that what I got from the support person who put the resume on my desk was the resume first and the cover letter second. If the resume didn't match what we needed to look for, we never looked at the cover letter. So they're not, I would say, don't sweat over it. Have one that's very simple, maybe an intro line. Very happy to be able to apply for this. I'm interested in this. I've done this for 10 years. I look forward to hearing from you. Just because really the resume is what's going to get you the audience, not the cover letter.
That's such an important point. I think often people use a generic resume and try to connect the dots to the job in the cover letter. But if they're going to look at the resume, and if they're not seeing it there, they're not going to bother with the cover letter. So you lose. And so you have to customize the resume to show the clear evidence of the requirements on the job.
Definitely.
The exception on cover letters, I would say, is in nonprofits and academics. Is colleges and universities tend to like cover letters, and nonprofits tend to like cover letters. In that case, more to see how you relate to their mission for their nonprofit. But those are the two exceptions. The others, I would say, don't bother. If your resume is a good match, even if they like a cover letter, but your resume is a really good match for the job, they're not going to ignore you because you didn't send a cover letter.
Right.
It's much more important to them to get a person with the right experience. Fair?
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah, definitely. Unless it's a really, if we happen to see a cover letter and it's a really weird, unique one, that isn't necessarily good. If it's an odd one, and I've seen a few of those where one was about Abraham Lincoln and being a good chopper of trees and apple trees, and he wanted to use his axe to take care of it was, I don't know, it was really interesting, but it made the annals of one of the most unique cover letters, but it didn't necessarily get him an interview. So.
There used to be a lot of advice out there, do something unique so that you stand out and get noticed. Right. But usually when people try to do that, it's unique and everybody remembers them, just like you remember that cover letter, but it turns you off on the person as a candidate for the job. And so they don't get the job. And so, yeah, you'll get remembered, but that's not the goal. Is you want to get the job.
It's interesting here. I would add a cover letter of sorts can certainly be on your LinkedIn profile in your summary. I mean, that's
in the about section.
Place to be brief, albeit brief, but it's a great way to put a little bit of more personal touch in there and what you do and your passion and what you love to do. Because as a recruiter, I'm looking at LinkedIn recruiter profiles all the time. So just a side note.
Actually, a great point there is, and I don't know what your experience is, but if you're responding to somebody based on their resume that they applied for online and you want to talk to them, do you also go out and look at their LinkedIn profile?
Sometimes, yes. Yep. Yeah, I guess it's just kind of a coin toss. It depends if what I'm seeing on the resume maybe isn't necessarily enough, or if I'm thinking there may be some detail left off, then I will. Yeah, I would say that. But generally speaking, and certainly because I'm looking at them online, I always tell people this too: if you're going to put your LinkedIn profile link on your resume, make it live. because then I will almost invariably click it. But I don't want to have to copy and paste it and go open up LinkedIn and click it in there and find you that way. But that's just make sure it's a live link that you're using, because that
Great
really
point.
gets you fully viewed.
And then it ought to be a fully filled out LinkedIn profile. If you make it a live link, or even give your LinkedIn profile link on your resume, and it turns out to be a very cryptic or weak profile on LinkedIn, that doesn't help you at all.
And if I could go back to one point about, kind of gets into networking pre-ATS. If you're applying to a job like at Best Buy, and if you get a chance to talk to someone that's at Best Buy, they will know basically how the system works. They'll obviously know some of the recruiters. They might not be the perfect match with the job that you're looking at, but they'll know. But they can also give you an awareness of what to expect, not only from an ATS perspective, but make sure that you ask them. It's like, hey, if I did interview with Best Buy, do you know anything about what the interview process looks like, what they usually ask for, what they look for? And it goes to the, what to expect in the ATS, but it's a whole nother aspect of positive takeaways from a networking connection.
Question, is there a recommended format for how to put dates on your dates of employment on your resume? Just month and year, just year? How would you prefer it? Or does the ATS system have a preference on that?
Well, some of the ATS, some ATS will ask for the month and the date, and again, that typically goes in kind of more of a text section, which is not necessarily something that we see. So again, the first thing that we primarily see with everybody is the resume. And then we can go to a different section of a different tab, basically in the ATS, if we want to see more of those specific things that you've literally filled out in the application. But the first thing we're going to see is the resume, and then we'll move in and around your application depending on what we see with that. But from a years and months perspective, some people put, I would say just like 2020 to 2024. Current, if you want to put, to make sure that people know that that I started in 10 of 2023 and now it's 11 of 2012 or 2024. That's fine, but I would say generally speaking, just years. I don't know, we'll take on that, Harry, too. So
you mentioned something that raised a question in my mind is, what if somebody were to use a generic resume, but then add additional customized information in the application part, as the ATS will parse out parts of the resume, but if they added additional information into the application part that's not on the resume, would that get noticed? I'm guessing probably not.
No.
Right.
No. No, chances are very likely not. Again, it depends on the ATS. Because some things that the recruiters see first are really blocks of text, that you literally filled out. How much experience they have in this, 5 years. Tell me about your experience here. Boom, and you're filling. That's what drives people crazy about the ATS, is if you have to basically redo your resume in the application system. We try to make the systems that we use much more user friendly than that, but there are definitely some that are not.
Definitely. Great question here. Is it better to go through a platform like Indeed or LinkedIn to apply, or directly to the company website?
Well, if you apply through Indeed or LinkedIn, it'll put you right into our applicant tracking system.
In your case, that may be true. I
Right.
know that that's not true.
It's not, I was
for
going
a
to
lot
say,
of
it's
companies.
not always true. So in our case, if you see it out there on LinkedIn, we will see that you applied through LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever source it might be, but it'll push you to the applicant tracking system. But yeah, there's no issue, I would say, if you see a posting on LinkedIn and you apply through LinkedIn or Indeed, that's fine. I mean, that's how the companies spread the message, farther out into the market. So
sounds good. Someone asks, you mentioned the format for ATS. Can you elaborate beyond font and chronological order? I have heard you should not use columns where, for example, skills are to the left and summary experience to the right.
Yeah, I don't mind those resumes. Sometimes it kind of helps read through a resume, especially if they're, it actually tends to make you be more brief, which is a good thing in a resume than too much information. But like I said, I think some of the applicant tracking systems will turn that into a block of text instead of, showing the actual layout. In Best Buy's case and some of the other companies I've been, if I pop open the resume, I can see exactly what you have, how you've laid it out. So I don't think there's any reason not to. You just need to be aware that maybe you have, the attractive resume that you've made, and then you have one that's a little bit more basic.
More text-based. Yeah,
right.
I agree. Someone asking, as much as companies will not say it, how do I make myself look like a 40-year-old instead of a 58-year-old? I'm applying to openings that I'm qualified for, but rarely getting interviewed.
Well, I can color my hair. Harry can't color his hair. So
actually, one of the reasons I keep it short is it doesn't show quite as gray as when it's longer.
But I was going to say that it gets down to, even in my profile on LinkedIn, I think, I can't remember exactly where I stopped my experience. It might've been 2010, something in there. So Harry, you could comment on this too, but I always talk about, it's kind of, from a sales perspective, you say, it's what you've done for me lately. So they're really going to hire you for what you've done probably in the past, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So if you've got 30 years experience, you don't want to put that in your summary. I have 30 years of experience, and you don't want to go back that far in terms of your resume. A lot of people will put additional experience and list companies and positions in just a little block, which is totally fine.
Without dates.
But again, right, without dates. But if you're talking 10, 12 years of experience and it all lines up with what you're applying for, anything past that, I don't know that I really worry about. You can certainly add the additional experience or not. So, and if they talk to you and look at your resume and go, well, it looks like your age would suggest you have more experience, they're never going to say that, or they shouldn't, and are not going to ask, well, tell me about whether experience that's not on your resume. So does that help, Harry? And you can comment on that too, certainly.
Yeah, I think so. I think personally, my preference is to get a understanding of your total experience, not necessarily the years, but like you described, adding a separate section of previous experience includes, and then just list companies and titles. You don't need any description or anything anymore, but just to show there was something before it. If your resume looks like you started at a director level position, then it's clear that there must have been something prior to that. And so I think the other piece of it is, if they really do have a bias and they interview you because it looks on your resume like you're 40 years old, but then they meet with you and they realize you're quite a bit older, you're starting out on a kind of in a hole that they feel like, well, I kind of been had here. And you might be able to overcome that, but I think that's always a rough place to start an interview process. So
I think, even for me, most of the people that I work with at Best Buy and my team, and I started as a contractor for 1 year and then went full time, but I thought, I'm probably 15 to 20 years older than a lot of them, which is fine. My job is to show that I know what I'm doing. I'm a professional. I've been successful. I've had a successful track record. I'm up to date in terms of, in the case of applicant tracking systems, interview processes, etc., to where I can compete with anybody regardless of age. So I noticed somebody in the chat should I put our address on the resume? And I would say leave it off. For me, it's just phone number, email, maybe LinkedIn, live link, and leave it at that.
I would say if you're close in vicinity to the company, then you don't never put your street address, but put, Best Buy is in Richfield. If you live in Richfield or in Bloomington, I would put it on there. It's a plus. If you live farther, if you live all the way across town, I would probably leave it off so that it doesn't affect their thinking about you.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, Harry, what you're getting at is if you're if we have a position in Richfield and you live in, I don't know, Lino Lakes,
Right.
or Mayor. I'm not exactly even sure where Mayor is, but I know it's a town.
It's far. Yeah.
Far. They'll go, what if they have to commute? Is that going to be hard? You put that little
Doubt in their
question.
mind.
So,
Agreed. What are your thoughts on being overqualified for roles? If they're looking for 3 years of experience and you have 7 or more, do you reject candidates for that reason?
I would say no. I've had a number of those experiences of late, and it's pretty consistent. And what I tell individuals is what you see typically what you see in a job posting is the minimum of what we would hire. So if it says 2 years or 3 years, that's the minimum. But we have and we do hire people with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years experience in those roles if it looks like something that you're interested in, that you can do, and that you like to do. My take on the other side of that coin is, if you have 20 years experience and you've been a director and a VP and you're applying to an analyst role, we're going to be concerned that not so much that could you do the job, it's like, what are you going to, why would you do the job, for one? Two would be, you're probably going to be asking for more income, for more base salary than the position offers, because though you say, well, you're asking for 3, but I have 20, so I can really knock it out of the park. And it's like, well, we gauge the salary based on what's required of the job. So we're not going to up the salary because you have more experience in this space. So there's a lot. And then obviously hiring leaders are going to be concerned, like, well, looks like they've had a lot higher level roles. So are they going to be coming to me for asking for a promotion and those types of things. So that's so to answer the question, no, we'll still talk to people like that, but I have very straightforward conversations with them in the interview. It's like, well, I see that you got 10 years experience, this is this level role. It's more of an individual contributor. Tell me how you're comfortable with that, or how this fits into the rest of your job search and what you'd really like to be doing. So I'm trying to just kind of get into a real honest conversation.
Why do ATS systems ask you to upload your resume, but then manually enter the same employment history and education information again?
I plead the fifth on that. I'm not the software engineers behind that. That's the frustrating part, that as companies look at how they work and the functionality of them, we want them to be as smooth as possible in terms of process for the applicants. Because if you have a terrible ATS, you might lose applicants that just go, no, I'm not going to go through this.
Right.
And I mean, you see that on LinkedIn. People are frustrated.
Well, I think it can be helpful to have a very basic text-based resume without any formatting that you upload in order for the system to parse your resume, and then have a formatted resume that you attach also, so that you don't have to manually type as much. When you have a lot of formatting on your resume, often ATS will have a hard time pulling out the correct information into the right fields.
Right. And having a text one, you could cut and paste right off of your resume into some of those blocks in an application. But again, it goes back to every system is different, and they're all going to ask for different things. And some are going to be less frustrating and some are going to be really frustrating. So
yeah. What's your opinion on listing skills, whether it should be at the top or bottom, or does it matter in order to get best into the ATS?
Well, again, if you leave off skills, let's say you don't have a skills summary section, and I would say typically it's in the top of the resume. Although technical resumes can have a top or the bottom, it doesn't really matter. But where it needs to be is in the content of what you're describing your work has been and what you've done. And I would say I would add to it skills, and I always coach people to do this, and Harry, you can comment too, is I would not put skills like strong communicator, problem solver, those types of skills in there, because to us, that's kind of an obvious that's what we want, but it's not a skill that's tied to the specific requirements of the role. Let's just say like your auditing skills or accounting or finance, those types of things. So if you want to have a very, very brief summary at the very top, 1-2 lines, of your opening statement, and then maybe a list of really core, very specific skills, like budgeting, for instance, that could be one. But other than that, I would just make sure that it's in the content of your resume. So when I read it, so when I'm looking at, if I see the summary, I'm going to read it really quickly. If I see a lot of fluff words in there that aren't real specific to, I have, experience doing Java development in this kind of environment, I'm not even going to read it. I'm going to skip. And if I see the skills and it says problem solving, strong communicator, etc., I'm not even going to read that. I'm going to go right to the content and see what I need to see in that content.
That's very related here to another question. And by the way, I'm going to skip a few here, and there were questions about how to network effectively. And actually our monthly meeting, I'll describe it here later, but one of our next presentations is going to be on networking coming up shortly. And that's kind of out of context a little bit for the discussion here. One of the ones, though, is related to what you just said, is how do I demonstrate soft skills without copying and pasting into my resume? And part of that is, as you said, people often put, I'm a great communicator, strong work ethic, strategic thinker. But as a recruiter, everybody says those kind of things on their resume. I don't really pay attention to that. I'm very focused on, do their skills match this job? That's what the first priority I have when I'm looking at resume. How would you describe that same question?
Yeah, I guess I would just line it up with what you just said in terms of I'm looking for very specific things. If I'm hiring a data scientist and I need certain types of modeling experience that they've done on certain tech stack, and then specific like predictive modeling and MMM, mixed market modeling. I've just been working on some of those. That's what I'm looking for. When I interview you, I'm going to be looking for your problem solving skills. I'm going to be looking for your ability to communicate, cross-functionally. I'm going to be looking for those examples, but that,
Not at the resume.
we're going to hire those soft skills, but we're going to get at that in the interview. The first things that we're going to look at is, can you do what we're asking you to do, very specifically in the functional aspects? Does that help?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, for the sake of time, we got just a couple more here real quick. There's unfortunately a number of questions here we still won't be able to get to. But if you email them to me through the website, I can get them to Michael and we can address them for you by email after the fact as well. But for somebody that's been out of work for an extended period of time, how do you list that on? What would you like to see on a resume to understand that better?
Well, first of all, I would say, don't feel like you're alone in that, because even since 2008, and I think most recruiters know, there's been ups and downs in the market, and people are in job transition, and sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's more. It depends on the level of position you're at too. But I think one thing that helped that, if you say, that I've been since, let's say, if I see a resume that says 2024, sometimes I'll find out in the conversation that it's been since January of 2024 that they're out of work. So my next question is, what have you been doing during that time? Sometimes the resumes will tell us that. It's like down under, like, they volunteered, and then you put a date of volunteering to do this, or you've gone back to school, or you've taken a certification. Dating some of those, especially if it's recent, really helps fill in the gap. And I would say, again, in the actual interview conversation, what I want to know is, what have you been doing since, whatever, you were laid off, unfortunately lost a job for whatever reason. How have you filled your time? Have you actually been interviewing? And let's say, some people will put, I just talked to a person yesterday that was out since 2022, but in the top of her resume, she put basically stayed home to give her young children. And then I can't remember what else she put. I was like, oh, okay. But her resume prior to that was great. She had a lot of tax experience. So I talked to her, and I didn't even bother asking her about that because she addressed it right there. So I guess that's what I would say is, just make sure if you're asked, you say you have some pretty good conversation topics about here's what I've been doing. Here's been maybe the challenges. But in terms of filling it in, if you have a part-time job that is basically helping you with finances, I think that's fine as well. So, and you don't have to put that at the top necessarily, but Harry, you can comment on how you might do that too. So.
Oh, I think that's good advice. One last one. Does the rule to stick to 2 pages for a resume still stand now that everything's electronic?
Well, I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, I should just have a 1-pager," and I would disagree. I mean, if you have good content and it's a full 2-pager, that's fine. I would probably shy away from a 3-pager. I see technical resumes that are even longer than that, which you don't need and we don't like, but a good solid 2 pages is great. I think usually if you get into 3, that just means that you could have edited it better, been more specific. So again, the resume is not to tell the entire story, it's to gain interest and hit the specifics. So
I don't know if you've experienced the same thing, but I've noticed a correlation that people that have exceptionally long resumes can't stop talking in an interview either.
There's something to be said for that. Yeah, yes.
Michael, thank you so much.
For you too, if you have a very brief resume, and sometimes you get on the call and I get very brief answers and not enough to even.
Yeah, right. I think that's true too. I agree. Great information. I hope it was insightful for people. I do want to, please hang on, everybody. I do want to run through some things with regarding what else is available through Crossroads. But if you, some of the questions we didn't get to, if you still want them to address, if you email info@mncrossroads.com, I'll make sure that either Michael or I address those for you, and we'll get a response to you in the next few days. So thanks so much for all that, Michael, and appreciate the time and effort this morning.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Harry.
Terrific. With that, I want to share my screen here. I'm going to run through some slides quickly of things that are coming up with Crossroads and other ways you can get plugged in. Certainly want you to take advantage of all the help and resources we have available. There's a lot out there that you can take advantage of, and I think unfortunately a lot of people don't, and a lot of it is just not being familiar with what's there. Some of you came through the national Crossroads website, which is crossroadscareer.org, and you found out about this webinar through that, and I'm welcome you. But we also have local presence here in Minnesota for mncrossroads.com. And the things we do are a combination of some online, some in person. And so obviously this webinar and other webinars we do and classes and other things that are online, people can take advantage of from a national basis, but our mncrossroads.com website gives all the details of everything we offer here in the Minneapolis area. And so I encourage you to check it out. There's a ton of information about upcoming events and how to register, how to take advantage of those. There's additional resources on there for you. We have a job board of a lot of local companies here that know what we do and are always looking for great people. And you can reach out to them to apply for those jobs and let them know that you found out about it through the Crossroads job board. And we get great response from those companies saying that they find good people through our website. So it does work. It's actually the one page on our site that gets more visitors each week than anything else, but check out what's there. It's not as populated as LinkedIn or Indeed, obviously, but there are some great jobs. Interesting enough, the state of Minnesota is the biggest poster on our website for jobs, which I'm not sure how that came about, but I'm glad to have them there. But check out the website at mncrossroads.com. Our kind of cadence each month of what we offer as far as presentations is on the first Thursday of each month. We meet at Grace Church in Eden Prairie in person. We have a seminar presentation like this that Michael did. Then we have our networking group that meets in person after that. I'll describe that more in a moment. We have somebody come in to talk about financial considerations during job search, and a kind of a Q&A for that. And we have a micro job fair. We always have one or two or three companies that come in to talk about positions they have open right now. So take advantage of that. Spend the morning there with us from starting at 7:30 till usually runs about 10:30 or so. And it's highly productive, and I know you'll find it encouraging and helpful in the process. On the second Thursday evening of each month, we have seminar presentation in Woodbury at Woodbury Lutheran Church. So for those of you that live on the east side of town, we certainly encourage you to take advantage of that as well. And then on the third Thursday morning, we have a webinar that you are participating in today. And so you can take advantage of those. All the details and our upcoming schedule of topics and speakers and everything is on our website at mncrossroads.com. On a weekly basis, there's multiple things you can take advantage of. We have our Networking with Grace group that meets in order to share contacts and leads and ideas and encourage each other. And Wes Tang on our team leads that each week and does a fantastic job of helping everybody walk out with something. And so the first Thursday of the month is in person at Grace Church in Eden Prairie, but every subsequent Thursday each month is online through a Zoom meeting, so you can participate from anywhere. So encourage you to see the details on the website, sign up for the online meetings, and take advantage of that as often as you can. We have one-on-one coaching. If you want to meet with one of our volunteers, either through a Zoom meeting or a phone call, you can sign up the form, fill out the form online for one-on-one coaching, and one of our volunteers will reach out to you and find a time that the two of you can get together. And you can take advantage of that as often as you like with any questions about your job search. And I find a great number of people just want to talk through their situation with somebody that gets it, might have some advice and ideas for them, but friends and family might be supportive, but don't always get what you're going through. And so feel free to take advantage of this, and you can sign up, see the information, and sign up online. If you have been in a job search for more than 5 minutes, you probably already experienced some of the emotional roller coaster you go through with this. And I really am a big believer in prayer can help calm our fears and make it clear that God is walking with you through this process. And we have a prayer team that loves to pray for you. They pray for this ministry and the people that participate in general overall. But if you have a specific prayer request, you can fill that out on our website, and they'll be praying for you. If you feel like you're really struggling with some of the emotional journey through this and would like some additional care and counseling and spiritual support through it, we have Soul Care. We have some people that are trained as support for you and can meet with you through Zoom meetings on a little more regular basis for a little while. So see the details and sign up online there. The bread and butter, or meat and potatoes, however you want to put it, of what we offer, though, is through our 8-week online class. And we have online classes available that start up every month. We'd like to get back to also offering in-person classes. It'll depend on the number of people that sign up locally. We fill up our online classes pretty well, but many of those are from around the country. And so we love that and glad to have you. But the more people that sign up, we'll get in-person ones going again as well. But we have another class I'll be leading one starting January 14th on Tuesday afternoons. You can find the details online and sign up there. And we cover everything surrounding a job search, starting with attitude and getting in the right frame of mind and doing some assessments to be able to better express who you are and what makes you unique. And we talk a lot about networking and targeting companies through the whole process because it's so critically important. It was mentioned here this morning. We'll be talking more about that going forward. We go into best practices for resumes and interviewing and negotiating and selecting the right job and all those things and more. But I think equally important to all the content, which I think is very strong, I think equally important is having that weekly check-in with others that are in the same boat, some light accountability, some encouragement and moral support, and help evening out that emotional roller coaster. And throughout the 8 weeks, we explore what's God's perspective of your career and your job search and your life in general as well. Really encourage you to take advantage of that, because I think for most people that really struggle in their job search, there's two parts to that. One is not knowing what the most effective things are or what best practices are, and then struggling with the emotional ups and downs through all this. And I think we can address both of those well in these classes. So please take advantage of it. Like I said, I'll be starting another one starting January 14th, and we'll have new ones starting each month. Join our LinkedIn group. If you put in MN Crossroads Career Network in the search box, you'll find two things there. One is our LinkedIn group, in which case we have about 2,700 people that have been through Crossroads in the past and are remaining in the group just to be as networking contacts into the organizations they work at now. And so if you're looking for people to network with, that's a great place to go and see who you can find at the companies you're targeting. And then the other thing that'll come up when you search MN Crossroads Career Network is our company page, which I encourage you to join on that as well, because that helps us get more exposure. And I constantly get comments from people that they wish they had found out about Crossroads earlier in their job search, and getting the word out is our biggest challenge all the time. So the more people we have on our company page, following our company page, the better the word gets out on those things. And we encourage you to let others know too. Word of mouth is always the best. And then after you land, stay in our LinkedIn group and just be a resource and give back by being available for others to ask you questions and get advice as well. Someone asked earlier whether this webinar is going to be available to watch after the fact, and it is. All of our webinars for the last few years are on our YouTube channel, and you can find all kinds of topics there that you can review. And the nice thing about YouTube, you can watch them in double time, and you can review, back up and go forward, and so you can catch more in depth what you want. This will get posted before the end of the day today, so you can review it there and watch it as many times as you want. We're coming up to Christmas holidays. You got a little bit of break in between. You can spend in between Christmas and New Year watching job search videos the whole time, right? Maybe you can find some better things to do, but they're available for you there anytime. Our full day job search workshop is coming in. This is local, in person, so only those of you that are in the Twin Cities area, but certainly encourage you to take advantage of this if you can. It's on Saturday, January 4th. It is a full day event from 8 o'clock till 5. And we have all kinds of topics, several speakers coming in to talk on those topics. We'll have a Q&A panel of recruiters and HR professionals to answer any questions you want. And it does include lunch and course materials. It is the only thing we charge for. It is $20. But if cost would be the only issue that would keep you from coming, we do have scholarships available. We don't want anybody to miss this because of cost. So the details are on the website. Find the information for the workshop there. You can find all the details of what we'll be doing and reviews from people that have been there before. It's a great way to kickstart your job search, whether you're just starting out or maybe you've been in it a while and you need a refresher or some fresh ideas and some new hope and encouragement. It's a great way to get that all in one day. And so really encourage you to take advantage of it as you can. It's a great way right at the beginning of the month to launch the new year and start your job search in the new year strong. So check out the details on the website, sign up, register soon, and we'll get going on that. I just want to acknowledge we can't do all the things we offer through Crossroads without a lot of people. And we've got actually over 45 people that volunteer for Crossroads in one way or another. And I'm grateful for every one of them. It enables us to offer a lot. Nobody's getting a paycheck. Every one of them does it because they bring some knowledge and expertise and willingness and desire to help others in the process. And so as you talk to others throughout Crossroads, Michael has, as he mentioned, has been significant in Crossroads for over 12 years now, I think probably longer than that, and facilitates small group classes and does a number of other things. And I'm grateful for all of the people that contribute in some way. If you don't have a church home and you're here in the Twin Cities, I encourage you to check out the churches that are associated with Crossroads here. Grace Church in Eden Prairie, certainly, and Woodbury Lutheran Church. Both of them, the websites are there. You can watch online as well, streaming online the services as well as meet in person. But I think having that community and support and strong biblical teaching is critical. And so get plugged in if you're not in a church now. And then our next Crossroads event is in person only at Grace Church in Eden Prairie on Thursday morning, January 2nd. Skip Nelson will be talking about networking, how it's critical for your job search and you, not just for your job search now, but as a lifestyle going forward. The job search in the future becomes a heck of a lot easier when you have a strong network that you built and nurtured and can reach out to when you need it. And Skip does a great job of describing the importance and how to do it effectively. So check that out. And hope this morning was effective and worthwhile for you. I hope you got some great ideas and things that you can apply, and hope to see you again at other events that we have, unless you land a job this week, which is our greatest hope for you. And talk to you again soon. Reach out anytime. You can always reach us through the website. Thanks for joining us this morning, and best wishes.